Welcome to Lockbox, a podcast providing real estate professionals with action items for success. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I'm going to be your host. I'm the founder of two real estate marketing and tech companies, STEEZY.Digital and RealNurture.io. In this podcast, you'll learn from top 1% real estate and mortgage brokers the exact secrets to their success. Welcome to Lockbox. Hello, my name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I am here with Emmanuel Guarino. Emmanuel, thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So why don't you start by telling our listeners who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, so my name is mentioned, Emmanuel Guarino. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to be talking about residential assisted living, what we do, teaching on those courses, and then also kind of my background of selling these homes in the Phoenix market and my experience, the ups and downs, and the good, the bad, the ugly of that whole process as well.
Absolutely. So let's dive in on first your background in real estate. So what got you into the real estate industry in the very beginning? What was your first experience?
I always wanted to be in real estate, but I kind of had that fear of, well, I'm not going to be good enough, this, that. I watched the $1 Million Listing and said, I want to be that person, this and that. And it wasn't until I ran into actually a great sales trainer, Tom Hopkins, of all people. And we sat down, we had a dinner one night, and he just said, you know what? You just need to take action. Just stop thinking, start doing, just take action. And that's when I really started taking those steps to get my license and get started with it. And I had seen, other friends in my, peer group starting to have some success, and some people did, some people didn't. And I just said, you know what? I just got to start taking action. And really the big precipice for it was after I had that conversation, I said, maybe, maybe not. I was in college. The next door neighbor's house goes up for sale, sells in one day. And I'm like, okay, well, that, I missed out on $5-6 grand right there, that commission. That's no big deal. I'm making like $500 a week at the time. Like, that's okay. I don't feel too bad. The next door neighbor to that next door neighbor's house goes up for sale, doesn't even make it on market, sells in 0 days. And so now I'm looking at it, I'm going, $12,000 I just passed up, and I made $12,000 the entire previous year. And I'm going, what am I doing? Just not taking action. Someone's selling those homes. It might as well be me. I'm the next door neighbor. So that was really the start for me of just kind of the technical side of things. And I'm sure we'll get more into my father's story and things like that later on. But that was kind of the big start for me.
Awesome. Yeah. So that was your first experience. You're like, oh my gosh, for a course that will take me 70 hours ish to complete and get my real estate license, I could be making as much as I make in a year with 2 transactions. Like, what am I doing? I need to get into action, get my license. So then you mentioned some influence from your father.
Yeah. So, really one of the other big things is, I met Tom Hopkins because of my father. My father, Gene Guarino, he's unfortunately passed away. However, he was a legend in the assisted living industry. And, I just always remember him encouraging me too. But sometimes when your parents tell you something, it goes in one ear, out the other. But then someone else tells you the same thing and you get the message. And that's kind of what happened. But, what was amazing about it is I just remember my father always encouraging me, always telling me to just keep going. And what was really cool about it is the first deal I ever closed, the commission check on that deal was for $15,000, and it was $3,000 more than I made the entire previous year. And again, like we're talking about, it took me about, realistically, when you break it down on a per hour basis, it took me about 1 week's worth of work to make it. And yet I had worked every weekend the entire previous year, being a waiter in a restaurant, Mr. Nobody, whatever, $12,000 versus 1 week's worth of work, 15. And that's when I really learned the lessons about working smarter, not harder. That's for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then that also lends a little bit of insight into the reason why you chose assisted living homes and why you're teaching on that today. So your father was kind of a legend in that space. And, at first it's, I think, natural to resist, especially in your like teenage and your formative years, and like your early 20s, to resist a family business. It's so natural to do that. But then, as you mature a little bit, you go, kind of chip your teeth and you realize like, wow, business and life is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I'll go see what Dad's doing. So is that kind of your experience? Like you came back around?
Pretty much. It was, I wanted to get into corporate wellness, and, before that it was teaching. Before that it was, God knows what. But, I was just kind of looking for that purpose. And my father, kind of his background, his story was, his mother needed assisted living care, and we lived in Arizona. She lived in upstate New York, and we went to visit her one time, and she actually fell. She cracked a rib, and she needed assisted living care. When we went to go look for what was available, there was just dumps out there, no other way to put it. And we said, we got to do something about this. So that's when my father started his first residential assisted living home. So we've seen a big assisted livings, but this is in a residential neighborhood, residential home. He started that, and then he started the second one. Then people started asking him, hey, like, this is really cool. You're making a bunch of money with these homes. Teach me how to do this. So he started teaching on how to do it. And around that time, like we were mentioning, I was kind of in that college age, and I was just like, Dad, whatever you need me to do, I'm in. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to take action. How can I help you? And he said, well, we don't really need help teaching right now. What we need help with is our students are looking for deals. They're looking for existing assisted living businesses. We need someone to go out there and find these deals for the students. And I just said, I'm on it. And really after that, what happened was in Arizona, there's about 2,000 care homes. And I remember I went to the training with a partner. His name, well, actually, we won't use his name. That would be bad. But anyways, we left the training and we said, we're going to call all 2,000 of these care homes. We're going to start finding these deals. And I remember I called him back probably 10 days, 2 weeks later. I said, hey, how many homes have you called? I was starting from the bottom down. He was starting from the bottom up. And he's like, 15, 20, I think, I'm like, well, is it 15 or 20? He's like, actually, it might be more like 10. Well, how many is it? Well, it was like 4 homes that he had called in 14 days. And then he asked me, he goes, well, how many homes did you call? I'm like, all of them, all 2,000 care homes. I called them all. And he's like, well, I had a bachelor party and it was the weekend. And it was, I didn't want to call it because it was late and this and that. And I realized, okay, well, that is not a partnership I'm moving forward with. But I realized that that's what a lot of people do is they just make excuses. They're just going, well, I can't be successful because of this, because of that, because of whatever. And as I mentioned, I was in college at the time. I was dead broke. I was making these calls in my boxers sometimes. Like I guess I had money for pants. I could have been wearing pants, but I mean, I'm a nobody trying to go out there and make this thing happen. Yeah. And it really just did take that grit just to keep going, keep pushing. And, what I realized when I, got into this niche was, there were people calling these assisted living homes, but nobody knew how to talk the talk. Nobody understood the business. Nobody was really building a true relationship. They were just trying to sell the house, but there's this business attached to it. And so when that part comes up, the realtor is like, well, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I said, no, I know what it is. I can understand that. I know what the buyers are looking for. And I have some buyers. And then I started working through that process. And before we knew it, we just started selling, a bunch of these homes, and people were going, hey, if you want to sell these homes, these are the people that you call. And that word of mouth really started to take off. I didn't have to make 2,000 phone calls in 2 weeks anymore or anything like that. We figured out how to be smarter and not work as hard, as they say. So That's a little bit about that background.
So the evolution then, you started to just work with realtors that had listings for these assisted living homes, because I see them a lot on the MLS. Mm-hmm. It's under the multifamily category typically, yep. and you'll see it. Hey, this has a thriving assisted living business attached to it, and it'll be like this 11-bedroom house that looks like right. It's like a 4-bed, but there's like 11 bedrooms in it, and you're like, wait, how's this? This is a single family home. How's this 11 bedrooms? And so it is something that throws you off, number one, when you first see it. You don't know what to do with it. And there's so many other deals out there. A lot of people just pass it up. They're like, oh, I'll just go do something else. So that's phenomenal that you now have a little bit more structure and training around that based on proven practices. And it seems like you all also have like a buyer list of investors that want these homes and are ready for them. So why don't you talk a little bit now about RAL Academy?
Yeah. Well, in a nutshell, what these homes are, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, what is this? What do they do? What are these things? Residential assisted living. So what we help out with in these homes are the residents' activities of daily living. So cooking, cleaning, getting up and out of bed, bathing and showering. And just kind of how some quick, simple math might work out on one of these homes. You might have 10 residents in the home, and they're each paying about $4,000 each month. And that $4,000 is covering everything. So food, care, the house, electricity, you name it, that $4,000, that's everything for them. So 10 residents at $4,000 a month. You have expenses like caregivers and food and electricity. That might be, $25,000 each month. Let's just call it that. plus a $5,000 debt service on top of that. So at the end of the month, you're bringing in, $10,000, $15,000 a month with an example like that. I mean, that can be very, very lucrative if you're doing that the right way. And we, have students who have homes who are bringing in 10 and 20,000 and, plus, and it can really get really, really big very fast versus, doing the conventional single family home rentals. It's a way to make a lot more cash flow a lot quicker. Just depending on where you're at, your goals and everything that you're trying to do, it is a business. It's not a passive, investment that you're never going to see. No, but you're also not working in the business. You're working on the business, putting the right people in the right positions. So we're not caregivers or managers. We put those people in those positions so that way we can have that freedom of time and do what we want.
Yeah, interesting. That makes sense. And from that point of view, it is a little bit more interesting than a single family rental where you might clear 300 a door or 600 a door per month, or even if you're Airbnb-ing it, I mean, at most I've heard like 5,000 a door, and that's like Airbnb in a prime location, right? Killing it. But the fact that you can purchase an existing business with beds, with caregivers, and then go in there and run it like a business. Maybe there's a toxic employee that needs to go, and then we run a recruiting campaign and we get some new employees in there to work it. And they obviously didn't market this well because 9 of their 11 beds are empty. Yeah. So now we need to go do some marketing and fill these beds. And so you look at it more like a true business, an investment opportunity. Yeah. And the potential then is, like you said, 10, 15K on a single house.
Exactly. And I mean, these homes out there, I mean, there is so much money that you can make on it, but really one of the best things about this is you're making an impact. You're helping so many people who are at a vulnerable stage of their lives. And so our whole motto is do good and do well. If you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you want. And we get to help a lot of people and we get to do well financially. It's a really cool piece of it. One of the other things I want to mention, just because I know, we got a lot of realtors and brokers listening, when I was calling those lists, yes, I would always call on the active assisted livings that were for sale and things like that on the MLS and the LoopNets of the world and things of that nature. But really in this industry, if you're looking for the best deals, you got to go straight to the source. You got to go right to that seller and you have to find that deal yourself because, what's interesting about this industry is people don't want other people to know that there are assisted livings for sale, right? Because if they think about that, let's say the house is worth $800,000, the business is $200,000. If everyone finds out that the house is for sale or the business is for sale, all the residents leave, and now that $200,000 that they were going to sell just went away. Plus their monthly cash flow that's coming in. So the best way to find deals is to call them directly, build that relationship, and doing it the right way. That's definitely something we go over in the class of how to reach out to them, how to find the off-market deals. But doing it the right way is incredibly important because if you wait for, and this happens a lot in this industry where there's a realtor that comes in, they have no idea what they're looking at. Sometimes they're a new realtor. Sometimes they're, kind of a steamy, whatever you want to call it, realtor. And they say, oh, that business, the house, 800,000 and the business, 200,000. I think I can sell that for 3 million. And they're like, oh, really? Okay, I'll sign a listing with you. And so there's a lot of listings that you're going to see out there. It's a little bit of the Wild West where you'll see deals that are just awful, like make you want to throw up. And then there's other deals that it is just insane what's out there on the market. So
I want to stop you
there. There's really
there.
some opportunities there. Yeah.
This brings me to my next question. How do you value an assisted living business? Like, what's the multiplier on revenue? Like, how do you look at it?
It's a great question. It's something that we definitely go over a lot in the training, but kind of in short, I mean, that was one of the reasons why I was able to sell a lot of these homes is because I was able to paint a clear depiction of what the market was for both the buyer and the seller. And, with that being said, it takes me probably 30, 40 minutes to explain it in full. But what we're looking at is, obviously the house has a value, right? So the house has value just in real estate, bricks and sticks. And then there's that business right there. And how do we evaluate that? Well, first off, it's what does the whole thing cost in general? That's what we need to look at. So that's part of it, because if let's just say someone said, well, I'll sell you the house for 300,000, but I want 3 million for the business. It's like, okay, so it's $3.3 million deal. Like it's not, who cares what's on what, it's what is the whole thing in general. One of the big things is when we're running, a cap rate on a deal like this, This is a little bit different. This is not, an apartment complex in the bad part of Detroit and things like that, right? Where it's hands off. I don't even know where the property is. And you might be getting a 8, cap rate or 10 cap rate. When I'm looking at an existing business, something that's running really, really well, the absolute minimum that I would look at is about a 12 cap. But really, I want to see 15 and above, because this is a business. There's relationships. It's not, completely hands off. We need to make sure that we're getting a good enough return on this investment. And it's not just, well, I could have just bought that apartment complex and moved to Hawaii and just, had no worries ever. No, we got to be rewarded for that properly. So just in short, I look at a minimum. I mean, this is like a elite business that I'd look at, a 12 cap. I'd like to see 15
on NOI.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's kind of one of the big ones there. But, there's some other tips and tricks that go into it. And, it's nuanced because, part of it as well, let's say somebody wants to sell for 2 million, let's just say hypothetically, and it's a 14 cap, and that's great. But what if I could recreate the exact same thing right next door for $1 million? Why would I pay an extra $1 million to buy that existing business? Well, that's a weighing scale, right? Maybe if it was 1.3, well, that saves me the time, the effort, the home's already full, good reputation. Maybe that makes more sense right now. So again, it still makes sense at 2 million, but if I can do it right here, that's where there's a large weighing scale that goes into these. And, if you look at residential real estate, and you're doing a Zillow, whatever, or, CMA, you might be able to get $5,000 or $10,000 off on most comps that you're running. I mean, it's going to be very small margin of error. It's not a large margin of error here. It's that there's a big range of what's a fair deal for both sides. So when I would do a listing, sometimes I'd say, hey, I can sell your assisted living business and home anywhere from 1.3 to 1.6. It's not that I'm an idiot realtor who doesn't know what I'm doing. I'm just saying the market, the number one biggest thing of what it's worth is what someone is willing to pay for it. And so there's going to be a range there. There's some flexibility. And that's why it's very important when you're working with these sellers, you need to understand the business. So you talk their language. Otherwise, they're going to go, they don't know what we're talking about. They don't understand this business. Let me just, hold on. I'm making money. It's not that much work. I'll sell it later. And you see that a lot when residential realtors try to get these listings. So knowing how to do it properly is very important.
No, and that's why this training would be so key to if you're thinking about getting into residential assisted living listings, then you definitely want to get this training from REL Academy. One question I have is, what's the common motivation for a seller to sell? If you have a business that's generating 10, 15K a month, and after the mortgage is paid off, maybe 15 or 20 or more, then and it's a fully operating business where there's employees that are running it, and like, why would you sell that?
Yeah, a great question. There's really kind of a couple of reasons why. First is there's two types of people who run these homes. There's mom and pops, and then there's professional operators. So the way that we teach it is much more the professional operator model, where we're not in the home, we don't live there, we don't work there. We hire a manager, the manager hires the caregivers, the independent contractors. They're kind of taking care of it. And we're just making sure that the residents are happy, the manager's happy, everyone's good. We check in every once in a while. More the business side is what we're managing there. But the other model, the mom and pop, and you see this a lot. This is the most prevalent in residential assisted living. Probably 80, 90% of people who run them, they live in the home, they work there, they're working 24 hours a day, and they have Mercedes in the driveways and BMWs, but they only use that Mercedes to drive from their house to the grocery store and back. That's kind of the joke I would always make, is you only see those cars go one place. So that's one of the big reasons, is there's a serious burnout that can happen with people if they're working in the business. Obviously, the other reason why someone would sell is if they have what I call hot potato. So a business in a home that's in a bad location or has a bad reputation, or, a number of things, or maybe it's just a bad home and it can't get the rates it needs to make sense financially. So that's one of the other reasons. But then another reason, this would be more of our students and their model. A lot of our students, their goal is, let me get 10, 20, 30 of these and sell them off to a hedge fund for, $20 million and, or $50 million. And that's why they're exiting. So you have to look at each seller as a little bit different. You have to find what are their motivations, what are they trying to do? And you got to make sure you stay away from the hot potatoes because those can be very, very deadly, because they're not going to make money no matter who you are most of the times. So it's about finding the right deals that can cash flow very well.
Wow. Yeah. And I like that term, the hot potato, and being able to know deals intimately enough to not only see which ones are the right ones, but to have nicknames for them. I mean, that's just a testament to your experience in this space. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Now,
Absolutely.
when it comes to generating these deals, I mean, lead generation, myself, I own a real estate marketing agency. We help with prospect nurture and retention. So basically, we help the lead generation process through prospecting, digital advertising. Then we help them nurture the lead, right? Because real estate transactions don't happen day one. And so we nurture them. And then once they're closed, we help them put in this retention model to help retain the lead, generate referrals, and have those leads and conversions multiply into more transactions later. So a big focus for my clients and for all the real estate professionals I talk to is lead generation, deal finding, right? And so you mentioned like from a list of 2,000 in the market, calling every single one. And then you didn't really have like your scripts down at that time. And then as your career progressed, you realized like you could partner with listing agents that have these already and help them through that process. And then it seems like now you got to the point where we do know what to say to the list. So is the lead generation process now a lot more back on the phones? Like, are you doing mail? Like, what's been the successful lead generation tactic now that you have the experience and you know what to say?
Absolutely. From where it started, like I said, it started with, I was on the couch and I'm making calls and I'm like, I'm just a kid. Just
don't know what you're doing.
Out,
you're
right?
like,
exactly. I'm just taking massive action,
Just,
and that alone right there, what I realized is that no one was calling these homes and trying to sell them as assisted livings. So there's serious pros and cons when it comes to selling assisted livings. And I want to make sure to get into that so all the listeners can understand kind of what that is. And so one of the big things when it comes to residential assisted living homes, if you want to go out, and there was one point in my career, I think I had probably about 15 listings. I'm just me, like, in my house, I just got married. I have 15 listings. I'm trying to juggle all these. I'm like, oh my gosh. Getting the listings in the residential assisted living space is not necessarily the hardest part of this. And I want to be very understanding of this. What you need to do is you need to understand what is a sellable deal and what's not a sellable deal. So as a good example, a residential house, if you price it low enough, eventually someone will buy it. You know what I mean? Even if it is, $5,000 or $4,000 and it's in the bad part of town, I mean, eventually someone's going to buy this thing. When it comes to residential assisted livings, there are deals where it's literally you would have to sell it for less than the real estate value to sell it as an assisted living business. And that concept I can get into a little bit. I remember I went on a listing appointment. Lady wanted 500 for the business and the real estate. I told her, if you want me to sell this as a house, I can sell it for about 400. I think her house is worth about 400. And I said, if you want me to sell this as an assisted living business, I can sell it for about 250, 300. She's like, what are you talking about? The house is worth it. And I go, I know, but your numbers, this is not a good investment. I'd be much better off just buying a couple rentals down the street. She didn't like hearing that answer. She kicked me out. But that was one of the big things I learned getting into the industry is that it's not about just getting any listing. It's about getting the right listings, negotiating that price out to the correct amount that's in that fair range that we're talking about. And then when you have that, it's about attracting the right buyers and having that. So there's so many different factors going on. It's important to have all of them. Now, one of the big things as well is that these listings, they can be more expensive, right? It could be $1 million, $2 million, and I've been paid very well for the work that I've done. One of the other things that's been very cool about the deals is many times, and I know I just took my re-education, my 48 hours or 24 hours, whatever it was. And they say, don't do dual agency. Don't do that. Never do dual agency. Okay. I used to do dual agency all the time. And here's the thing about dual agency. It can work really well if the person who's the dual agent is a good human being. It can work really badly if you're not a good. So if you're like a sketchy person or whatever, you wouldn't be listening to the show. But if you got moral ethics problems, do not do that because that's the one-way ticket to jail. You got to make sure you have the right person to do it because you're tiptoeing a line many, many times. You got to be very, very careful with those relationships. So there was many times where I would do both sides of the deal, and it was much more of a business brokerage than selling a piece of real estate. The buyer and the seller is getting to meet each other. We're going out to dinner together, and I'm kind of sitting in the middle, making sure everyone's good and helping with that handoff. Now, some of the stuff I said was really good, right? Expensive houses and big listings and big commission check, dual agency. Oh my goodness, this sounds amazing. I'm going to get into it tomorrow. Well, what's the downside? Well, the downside is that these deals can take some time. They can really take some time. I mean, 6 to 12 months sometimes. And that's if, you get a couple really good buyers getting in there and they get it done. Now, it's not that I'm doing something wrong or that. The financing many times can take, 4 to 6 months sometimes to do one of these homes because there's a whole business that's having to be financed in there. So that's one of the big challenges. The other big challenges, again, this is not, if I go to buy a second residence or investment property, I don't get to meet the seller, or I'm not even talking to the other agent. There's so much back and forth because essentially you're marrying together two partnerships and they're becoming one and they're transferring. So there's a lot of things you got to be very, very careful with. And you got to understand when you're doing this. And that's why it's so important just to understand the business, educate yourself first, and then start going out and trying to sell these homes so you give yourself the best shot of success.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes sense. I'm curious what brokerage you're with.
I am with MB Andrews and Associates up in North Scottsdale. It's always nice going up there. I live over in Gilbert, Arizona, which you've been. It's a nice little place, but nothing special going there. But always love going up there to Scottsdale.
Yeah, absolutely. And they obviously offer real estate as well as business brokerage combined, right?
Yeah, and
both here.
That's one of the other big things is, my brokerage that I'm with, they're a real Swiss Army knife. It's like, you got a land deal, let's do it. You got an apartment, you got a single family home, you got an assisted living bit, you got a ranch over there, let's do this thing. They're very all about it. And I remember very early on in my career, I went to Keller Williams because I'm kind of a Keller Williams guy, button up type person. I said, I'm like a Keller Williams agent. I went in there and they were like, oh, you're the assisted living guy? That's great. Yeah, when you start, you're going to hand all your assisted living deals to Bill over here. And I'm like, who's Bill? And they're telling, wow, we got this MLM thing. And it's like, it sounded really good, but they didn't want me to sell these deals. So you first got to make sure your brokerage is okay with you selling these. Don't just try to take these things on, and make sure that you do it the right way. Because there can be some additional liability to it. So you want to make sure whoever your brokerage is, or if you're going out to sell these, you have some business brokering, I guess not even as much business brokering, but it's almost commercial real estate experience when you're going into it. Again, the biggest thing that you need to focus on bringing to the table is the relationships, valuing the property right, making sure everyone's happy. And your broker, that's who you want to rely on for that proper advice when you're going about those processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And for any of my listeners, if you're curious to get into this and looking for a model switch, I'll shamelessly self-promote eXp Realty and eXp Commercial. I'm a eXp Commercial multifamily specialist, and they have a business brokerage sector. So, for example, a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife as well with, nationwide reach. My mom and stepdad right now inherited a farm in Northern California that has land and an existing walnut farm business. And part of what I am now able to help and refer out to the eXp network is the land sale for an agent that specializes in commercial farmlands up in Northern California. And then the business to a business broker specialist that specializes in selling farms. And so you have that ability, but a lot of typical brokerages that are the brick and mortar local ones that are doing residential only, you might be listening to this and you wouldn't be able to do a business residential assisted living transaction altogether within your license and then earn a commission on it, right? So I think that's an important factor.
Well, one of the things I'll shamelessly plug eXp as well is I love my brokerage. That's why, I haven't left. I got personal relationships and things like that. But when you're out there, if you're new, maybe you're at a brokerage, you just had to hang your license somewhere, go out and look at what's available. Give yourself 5 or 10 chances, but absolutely make sure eXp is one of those choices because they really are the future of real estate. I mean, this is like the Tesla of real estate. You need to make sure that's one of them that you're researching. And, maybe it's not right for you or whatever. Maybe you're more the Keller Williams person or this, that, but eXp's got so many cool things. I mean, we could do the whole show on eXp, but I'm not even part of them and I'm promoting them, but great brokerage and some really interesting stuff that they have for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Emmanuel, is there something that I should have asked you, a question in particular that I should have asked you, or anything that you'd like to expand upon from earlier?
I guess the big thing is for all of you listening, There's people out there who go out and they're action takers, they're doers. And guess what? They make mistakes. You gotta break a couple legs to make the omelet, as they say. You got to go out there. You got to be willing to do what other people aren't. And guess what? I'm going to tell you this, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You don't have to cold call, 10,000 people every single day forever. Eventually that business starts picking up, those referrals start picking it up. But every person who's successful, every person who's in shape, every person who's whatever, they follow the right systems to start off. And there's no escape of that hard work. So don't look for some silver bullet solution. Look for, is it worth it? Is it worth what I'm doing right now? Are my goals big enough? Do I want this bad enough? Because I'll tell you what, I've had days where I've done 150 cold calls. And then I've had days where literally, you'd think my phone was going to kill me if I touched it, because I was just like, I can't make a call. It's all about that why, that passion. And so if you're ever struggling with a cold call, that's like the test, if you want it bad enough, and you got to get really clear on your motivations, your why. And I know one of the things, you love asking guests is like, what's that one thing that really, really helps every single day? I have a power hour every morning where I meditate, I journal, I work out, I listen to 30 minutes of a book. I don't do all that in 1 hour. It takes about 2 hours. But, if you're just getting started, meditate, journal. Brendan Bouchard has a great journal, just got some good prompts. Getting that day started off right and ending that day off right. You can't control what happens in the middle, but you can control the ends. You can bookmark your days the right way. That would be the one or two or three or five things, whatever I just said. Those would be the big things that I want to get across, because if one person just heard what I said and it seeped in and that changes their lives, it's all worth it. What we do here. So
absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And, we kind of skipped over the entrepreneur habits questions, and, we spent a lot of time on some really valuable topics, but I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm curious, how can listeners contact you? And then I think you had a free gift for the listeners as well.
Well, the best place is we got arielblueprint.com, arielblueprint.com. There's so many cool things on here. I'm on here right now. It's got, we got webinars we can give to you. We got a book though, our Ariel Blueprint book. That book is something you need to have and read through that. And, when it comes to residential assisted living, it's not right for everyone. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that apartments is right for everyone, or assisted living or fix and flip or this or that. You got to find that thing that's right for you. But don't go out there and just kind of my last word of advice to the listeners is don't go out there trying to look for some perfect solution. This and that. We don't live in a perfect world. Stop. That's the little devil on your shoulder giving you bad advice. Get clear on your why. Because when you're clear on that why, you can go out and be successful in anything that you try to do. Residential assisted living is an amazing thing. It's going to be big for the next 20, 30 years with all the seniors we have getting older. But whatever that thing is for you, just be clear on your why, be clear on that purpose, and the rest will take care of itself. But arielblueprint.com. That's the best way to get a hold of us, best way to get more information, or residentialassistedlivingacademy.com. If you want to reach out to us, happy to have a call with you, talk this through with you in more detail, and we can go over that with you.
Awesome. Emmanuel Guarino, everyone. RALacademy.com. I'll link below to the items that you mentioned. This has been a very unique episode. I appreciate you sharing the opportunity that is in residential assisted living. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Love being on here, and thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you want to accomplish your real estate goals, then I highly suggest downloading my free Ultimate Real Estate Goal Setting Framework. The link is in the description of the show, and it will help you break down your annual income goal into the amount of phone calls, appointments, or open houses you need in order to achieve that goal. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.